Alright, quick update on JASMY. So I'm switching out a few indicators for the purpose of today's TA because I believe it's probably best to trade this based on momentum. We're seeing a lot of momentum to the downside for Bitcoin right now. So instead of focusing on the RSI and the MFI, which I usually do, I'm going to switch these out and I'm going to focus on both the EMA ribbons and the squeeze momentum indicator today. So starting off with the 4-hourly time frames, let's start off with what's going on in the very short term. So you can see the EMA ribbons are firing a sell signal right now because we have flipped these 4-hourly EMAs to the downside. You can basically see since when JASMY bottomed, I noticed, first of all, the EMA ribbons work like an absolute charm on JASMY, especially on the daily. I'll get to that in a moment, but nonetheless, you can see this uptrend was very well supported, and every time we came down for JASMY, when we fired this long signal on the EMAs, we perfectly came back down into these EMA ribbons and kept bouncing and bouncing, and really, it started to get sticky once we fired the short signal. Now, I wasn't necessarily too worried about the short signal on the EMA ribbons while we were in this huge ascending bullish pennant. I'd be a bit silly to focus on a 4-hourly EMA ribbon when we're in a massive daily bullish pennant, and I still do want to focus on that because we have broken back into this bullish pennant, and there is still a very high chance, and it is kind of looking like it, although I personally don't believe so, but in my opinion it looks like JASMY is kind of setting up with a contrarian type trade today. Now you can see Bitcoin, especially on the daily, I mean we're coming back into the daily EMA ribbons, and in my opinion it is going to get extremely ugly if we start breaking below 43,000, which is the bottom of these EMA ribbons, but most specifically in my opinion 42,500. I believe this is a major point of control, and if we do, I'm really not worried if we come down to 42.5 because it's not going to switch the daily EMA ribbons to the downside, but if it does come down to 42.5 and starts hanging out here and breaking down, that is going to be really bad for the Bitcoin daily EMA ribbons. And while a lot of people are kind of thinking that JASMY goes up whenever Bitcoin goes down, I'm not of that opinion. I do have to strongly agree if you are of that opinion, because you can basically see as soon as Bitcoin found its bottom down here and started to head up on the 22nd of January, if we come back, I mean, JASMY was still heading down when Bitcoin found its bottom, but JASMY really started to pick up on the 14th of March, and if we find out where basically Bitcoin started to go on this massive rally was down here. We found the local bottom down here after being in this ascending, well, I don't want to draw a trend line, but you can kind of see a line of best fit. We're heading up like this. We found our local bottom down here on the 14th and we started to rally, and that's really when the gears started to shift for JASMY and we started to head up. So a lot of people, think that JASMY moves up when Bitcoin goes down. I would have to disagree with that opinion. And also, if we're looking at the 4-hourly, I do believe we could be potentially setting up for a fake out right now. Potentially not, but you can see on the EMA ribbons we flipped to the downside and we are pushing back to the upside of these EMA ribbons. So these EMA ribbons, it's really having a harsh fight with JASMY right now. We're having a tiny bit of selling volume coming in. JASMY looks like, at least in the short term, it wants to fake out, in my opinion. Now you can see we faked out below the bottom of this pennant, and now in my opinion we could be setting up for a fake out of the EMA ribbons before a very harsh rejection. Now I am of the opinion that Bitcoin is still very macro bullish, but I do believe we could be in for one quick micro flush out to shake out the weak hands, to sort out the funding rates on the longs and the shorts. Nonetheless, I still do believe Bitcoin is very macro bullish. I mean, you can see we've had these big moves up, big crashes down, big moves up, big crashes down, and we've always put in higher lows. And this up here is still a higher low from down here. I mean, crypto moves so fast that, people forget that 23 days ago, Bitcoin was down here at 37,000, and now people are, panicking and shitting themselves over Bitcoin being at, well above 43,000. So in my opinion, you know, this selling volume obviously doesn't look good for Bitcoin, and this could bring the market down temporarily, and in my opinion that could definitely bring JASMY down. But I do not think this is going to be a macro thing. I still am of the opinion that JASMY has bottomed down here, and I kind of am hoping that JASMY comes back down to the 2.3 cent or the 618 Fibonacci at the 2.5 cent, so I can begin my long again. Now, this is the 4-hourly analysis. Once again, just a quick recap. I either think we're going to be setting up for a fake out of the EMA ribbons and then a harsh rejection, or we are about to be rejected from these EMA ribbons before starting to head down to the price targets that I've been mentioning for a very long time, and that's 2.5 cent and 2.3 cent. That is the 4-hourly. If we come over to the daily, you can see the daily EMA ribbons, they've never flipped bullish. And I want to point out that we have crashed into these multiple times. We've crashed into these EMA ribbons and started to head down. So these daily EMA ribbons are really a very strong level of resistance, and we could potentially be setting up for, like I said, either a quick peak above these, which would entail, you know, a fake out on the 4-hourly, and then a big rejection coming swiftly afterwards. Once again, that is the EMA ribbons, and the daily looks like, to me, we're setting up for one big push to the downside, potentially to 2.5 cent or 2.3 cent. Looking at the squeeze mom indicator, you can see we've just flipped red, and this, in my opinion, is really not good. I mean, it is never really a good sign to flip to the downside, and I can only really find, you know, one scenario where the squeeze momentum flipped to the downside, and this was just, like I said, one quick flush out. Now, in my opinion, like I said, I do believe this is going to be a similar situation. I do believe Bitcoin, or JASMY rather, has found its macro bottom, and I don't believe the squeeze momentum is going to be anything like this, where we started to fall off the table, or anything like this, where JASMY started to fall off the table for like an 85% pump. Like I said, on both the daily, the 4-hourly, and all other time frames that I don't necessarily tend to focus on. I really don't like trading the 1-hourly, but from what I can see, JASMY really looks like it wants to come back down to this green range that I've been talking about, and that is between 2.5 cent and 2.3 cent. Both the EMA ribbons are kind of calling it, and the squeeze mon momentum looks like it wants to have one quick flush out of the weak hands. And in my opinion, that is basically the same as what's going on in Bitcoin. That is the same on what's going on the total crypto market cap. So I do think this is going to be one quick scare. I think potentially we could be setting up for a nasty, very nasty move to the downside in the very short term. But like I said, I think Bitcoin is macro bullish. This is still a very nice higher low currently, and I do believe that JASMY has bottomed down here, but I would like to see a move back down to the 2.5 cent and the 2.3 cent, and then I would like to see a strong push up, and then potentially we can start talking about flipping the EMA ribbons back to the upside. But once again, I really only think there's two scenarios for JASMY. We're either going to be setting up for a fake out and a rejection, or we are going to be moving down to this green box. That is just my opinion. You can let me know what you think down in the comments below, but that is all I've got for you for today for JASMY. Once again, best of luck if you're in JASMY, best of luck if you're looking to enter a trade. Once again, none of this is financial advice, it's just my opinion on the market, and you've always got to do what's best for you. Cowboy out. Peace.